new survey of officers in England and Wales has revealed many of the police working feel the pandemic has had a negative impact on morale. How is the police force coping? Well, let's talk to John Apter, who's the National Chair of the Police Federation of England and Wales. Thank you very much for your time with us this morning. OK, first full day out of lockdown. What's the thought in terms of what does this day look like for those who are working today in the police force?
Good morning, Aga. Well, I think certainly for policing, what many of my colleagues are telling me is that this second period of lockdown, in reality, hasn't really been a lockdown for them. It's been very busy out on the roads, out in the streets, the number of calls they're receiving, in great contrast to the first lockdown. So what we are seeing now is a very complicated landscape across England and Wales. I represent 130,000 police officers across England and Wales. There are very different rules and regulations in different parts of the country. So I think today, whilst many people, and completely understandable, are looking forward to getting back out into the shops, many of my colleagues will be concerned about what that will bring, because more people out and about, more expectation on them, confusing rules and regulations. They are criticised for not enforcing some regulations, which in fact is not their responsibility. So it creates a bit of a perfect storm, which actually is not that perfect.
Let's talk about today then in terms of responsibility and the confusing message. We were just talking about the shops reopening today. Is it the police force's responsibility to make sure that there's not overcrowding and people not abiding by the face space rules in shops today?
Well, it's really interesting, because as far as overcrowding and just public safety, of course that's a police issue, but it always will and always has been. And if there are problems within stores, we've seen it traditionally in the sales when, these big announcements are made on the Black Friday sales or Cyber Monday or Super Saturday. There are so many. Then sometimes the police will have to be called just purely for public safety. But certainly when it comes to social distancing, police officers are not in there with tape measures. It's not their responsibility. Many people think that it is their responsibility. Of course, if things turn into a public order situation and the staff in the shops need our support, then as long as we've got the resources available, which is a whole other issue, then of course we'll be there to help and assist. But many times we just simply don't have the resources. I think viewers would be really concerned and shocked if they knew exactly how many police officers were available in their towns and cities on any average day. It's far fewer than they may expect.
I will talk to you about resources available and morale as well, but also in Tier 2, pubs and restaurants can open. Alcohol can only be served with a substantial meal. You know where I'm going with this. Scotch eggs, that's considered a substantial meal by some ministers. Are your police force, your police members, are they going to be popping in and out of pubs to make sure that anyone in Tier 2 who is being served alcohol has a substantial meal?
Well, look, I laugh, but it's not funny. It's far from funny, because the messages that have been given by some ministers have been deeply unhelpful. And I spoke with an officer yesterday from a large force who said it wouldn't surprise him if they were issued with charts on what is a substantial meal and what isn't. No, of course, we're not going to be checking on what's a substantial meal and what's not. I think that's the responsibility of the government to actually make it crystal clear to the hospitality industry what's expected of them. But police officers are not going to be going in. We just don't have the capacity or the time to go in and check what people are eating. There are other agencies who are far better placed to do that for us, Naga.
Around 59% of those polled in this latest survey said that they would not recommend joining the police. Now, this is amid a recruitment drive by the government to hire 20,000 officers. Is that a direct response to the pressures of the pandemic?
Yeah, and let me put this in context. This is more than 25,000 police officers responded to this survey. So if chief constables or government fail to listen, then that will be a disgrace. It really will. This should sound alarm bells. Police officers are feeling let down at the moment. Now, they almost feel ashamed or not wanting to put their hands up and say, we do feel let down. We have been battered senseless throughout this pandemic. Metaphorically speaking and physically, assaults on police officers rose during lockdown, which is just a whole other issue. But yeah, many officers are coming to me, and these are the officers who generally are the silent majority. But they're coming to us and saying, I've really had enough. No matter what I do, it's never enough. It would appear in the media. I'm damned if I do, damned if I don't. If I do what I think is right and criticised by some, I don't feel supported all the time by my bosses. Where do I turn to?
John?
So my plea... Sorry, no.
Well, I was just going to, as you know, time is always against us, and I do think what you're saying is important. A yes or no answer. In your history as in the Police Federation, has it ever been this bad in terms of morale?
Under the Theresa May government, it probably was a little bit lower, but during the pandemic, where police officers, like all other emergency service workers, really genuinely want to do their best, it is very low. That should be a serious concern for government and for the leaders within policing.
John Apter, National Chair of the Police Federation of England and Wales, thank you for your time with us this morning on Breakfast.
And it's time now to get the news, the travel and the weather wherever you're waking.